So just to remind everybody, obviously, if you are in this presentation, you should be in the final stage task of your application. But we wanted to remind persons that in order to be eligible to be awarded a postgraduate scholarship, the current policy requirements is that you have already completed either a bachelor's or a master's degree, that you have a GPA of a 3.0 or a 2.1 or higher. You cannot have another degree of the same level. So if you already have a master's degree, then you should be applying for a postdoc, a doctoral level, not a master's level. The current scholarship policy does not allow for the same level of degree to be funded, regardless of whether the first degree was funded by a government scholarship or not. And reminding persons who are studying online that only your tuition and your books will be funded. If you're doing an online course, some online programs obviously have may have a placement or kind of a overseas seminar that you have to attend. And so you would speak with the administrator in regards to that and how we fit those kind of expenses into your overall scholarship. So as I said, most of you are, or all of you should be in the final stage tasks. And in that stage, the tasks that need to be completed is the medical declaration. And if you are studying online, you will not need to complete the medical declaration. However, if you are going to be going on campus overseas, then you will need to complete the medical component. Basically, it is, if you haven't looked at it yet, when you go to that task, you can download the two documents. One is for you to complete and sign, and then one is for the doctor who is doing your physical or examination to complete. All we need are those two forms back. We don't need the actual medical back, and we don't have anything specific in terms of the medical. The doctor will determine what is needed for them to determine that you are fit and able to undertake the course of study. You will need to be able to upload your unconditional acceptance letter from the university. You will need to upload a final transcript if you are coming straight from another degree program. Your right to be Caymanian form, if it's requested. Some of you may have done this previously and were able to carry that forward. If not, then please upload that document. Your official degree plan and university costs, and this includes your tuition and accommodations if you're on campus. For persons doing postgrad, this is very, very key, especially your degree plan. And your degree plan you should be able to go on the website and actually, print that off or save it, whatever. And it should be an outline of what your course looks like over the year or the 2 years that you're going to be studying. Why this is important is because most of the postgrad programs are continual programs. So the normal scholarship period and payments are fall term 1 and spring term 2. And then there's summer, but summer is only approved if it's mandatory by the university, and if it's mandatory by the university. What we're finding is that a lot of persons are in programs that are continuous, and so therefore they start in the fall, they go straight through the spring, and then they also continue straight through the summer, and they end like the end of August. So it's really important that you are able to share that degree plan with us so that when we're looking at what is your scholarship award going to be, we're ensuring that we're covering the actual span of the program. Once you complete final stages and you hit the submit button, it will move you to the award package stage. And this is when the administrator is going to review those final submissions make sure that you are meeting the requirements. If you are not meeting the requirements, then you would be notified that you are not eligible for the scholarship, and it will state for what the reasons are. At this point in time, it's usually either you have not met the academic requirements, or you already have an existing degree of the same level. We will be looking at your university costs and the length of your program. This determines your scholarship amount, and this will help to create your bond. We ask that you keep a good eye on checking your emails, because if we have any questions, our administrators will contact you via email to clarify this information, because again, what you provide us is what we're going to use to build the bond documents. If for some reason you do not have access to the email that you use to create your account on the eGov site to access our portal, then you need to email scholarships@gov.ky and letting us know what the new email is. Basically, you will need to go back to the eGov site, create a new account, and then provide us with that new email address, and then we will work with you to sort that out. So your bond documents, once we have agreed on the length of time and what it's covering and the amount, and you accept that, we will email you the bond documents. The bond documents include the bond agreement, which is signed by yourself, a surety, and signatures are notarized. If you are online and you are employed, you can stand as your own surety. So just need to be yourself and the notary. If you are going to be on campus, so you're going overseas, you will need to have a surety sign as well. And this applies even if you are a mature individual. We also have a contact detail form that needs to be completed. Obviously, some persons may not have their overseas information at this point, so please include local information that we can contact you locally up until when you're overseas, and then you can update us with your overseas information once you have it. Once you've completed those documents and you have them all signed and filled up, you're going to upload them back into the portal, and you're going to then place the originals in an envelope addressed to scholarships and drop them in the drop box, which is located downstairs in GAB in the lobby, right by the counter where the phones are. Once the documents are uploaded to the portal, then we can start processing your disbursement, which the banking information and everything you would put in the portal when you're getting ready to upload your documents. So we'll have your banking details. So scholarship disbursements, we can only do online transfers to local banks only. We can make payments to either KYD or US accounts. We cannot make payments to credit cards. Once your submission is in the payment processing stage, you'll be advised by email, and we're asking persons, if you hit the button submit at 10:00 a.m., please don't call our office at 10:05 just to check to see if we got your submission. We have hundreds of students that we are processing at this time, and this year we actually have the most postgraduate applications that we have had ever. So we have almost close to 200 persons who have applied for a postgrad level scholarship. So we have limited resources in terms of hands in the office, but they're very busy and swift hands. You should receive, when you submit your documents or your submission, you should receive an automatic reply saying thank you for submitting your information. If you do not receive that email, please just double check that you did click submit. If you have and it's showing you that the submit button is not accessible, then please contact us so we can go into the system and see if there's an issue why your application might be kind of stuck in a certain section. Scholarship funds can be used for tuition if you whether you're online or on campus. Tuition is what the funds should be primarily paying for. If the university offers you a payment plan, then that is something that we advise individuals you may want to consider. Usually that is for persons who are going to be on campus. Most programs that are online, you will pay based on the number of modules that you're taking. There is an expectation of a certain number of modules per term. And so once you register for those modules, you get a tuition. We will provide you with that funding. And then, so you may actually get more than one payment depending on your program. And if that is your case, when the administrator speaks with you in regards to confirming your amounts and details, then they will talk to you about how you would request funding outside of the two main times that we open the portal for disbursements, which is fall and spring. If you're going overseas, the amount does provide for 2 airline tickets. We ask students to please be conscious of your airfare. We are expecting persons to fly economy, and it's from Cayman to the university location, not from Cayman to a vacation location, and then you're going to go to the university. So it's very specific in the bond and the details in terms of what those airfare tickets need to be looking like. Obviously, accommodations, if you're on campus, if you're renting, we ask that you be reasonable in your renting accommodations. If those persons who are studying in the UK, central London is going to be very, very expensive. So you're going to want to, maybe have a look outside at a more reasonable renting accommodations. We also find that often persons, especially again in the UK, if they're living off campus, they are required to have a guarantor. The scholarships office nor the UK office cannot stand as your guarantor. Usually this has to be someone who has been resident in the UK for, I think it's at least 5 years, and their income equates the value of the apartment that you're renting. So it can be a bit complicated. So these are things that if you're going to be on campus, you want to make sure that you plan for ahead of time. There are some companies that will allow you, they will stand as a guarantor for you, but usually those companies will require you to pay, if not all, at least half of the rent upfront. Health insurance. So if you're going to the UK, and have a British passport, you should be covered under the NHS. So you should not be requiring health insurance. For those who are studying in the US or Canada, your university may be requiring you to provide health insurance coverage and provide a company that you need to use. This is something that your funds can be placed against. If you're going to the UK and you don't have a British passport, then you're going to need to pay for your health insurance up front, because your status would be as an international student. The health insurance cannot be local policies. We cannot use the scholarship funds to cover any local policies. It can only be used for policies that are outside the Cayman Islands identified by the universities that you're attending. Obviously, scholarship funds pays for books and supplies. And as I said previously, if you are online, it's for your tuition, and books are the only things that would cover. General stuff, meals, transportation, dorm supplies, winter clothing if you're going in some very cold weather, and at the end of the year, storage if you're doing a master's or your degree program is more than 1 year. We ask again for persons to be considerate in regards to transportation. I know the UK has a very reliable transportation system. And so, we expect persons to be reasonable in their expenditures, not, ordering the top class Uber to go back and forth to university and so forth. We do not fund paying for a car. We do not pay for car insurance. We cannot pay for gas. So again, being reasonable and understanding in regards to the amounts and where you're allocating the money to. Receipts to keep. So please ensure that any tuition payments that you make, that you're keeping those receipts. Your accommodation payments or rent payments, you're keeping those. We will also need to see a copy of your lease agreement if you're going to be living off campus. Any airline tickets that are purchased, any insurance payments. Again, if you're on campus, you may have a meal plan, and anything usual, that is over $500 that's linked to your studies, then you want to just keep hold of those receipts. We do not need to see every grocery bill, so don't need to see Walmart and Target and Tesco, or what's the other, Marks and Spencers. We don't need to see any of those, but it's the more big item tickets that we want to make sure that you hold on to, so that when you're doing your submissions for your next disbursement, you are able to, one, confirm and justify how you use the money that you are being provided, if approved now, and then what your expenses are projected to be in the next upcoming term. If you're awarded a scholarship, you're expected to maintain a GPA of a 3.0 throughout your studies. You're expected to stay in communication with the Secretariat, and I mean, just touching base with us once a term to say, you settled in and things are going well, or if things aren't going well, obviously, please let us know. We encourage you to seek the kind of support that you need from the university resources. If you find that you're struggling, whether with courses or other issues are occurring, that you tap into the resources that you have available to you. And if there are any kind of accommodations that are needed because of learning challenges or any other situations, please make sure that you're accessing those additional resources as well. Things to remember. Remember that you are going to have to account for the funds that you received, as I just mentioned. You'll need to provide a term final GPA or results at the end of each term before any funds will be dispersed. If you are not able to demonstrate that you have used the full amount of the funds that were provided to you, then it would be presumed that you then have some money left over from your first disbursement, and obviously whatever disbursement you get next would be adjusted for that. If, and I do not expect any postgraduate people to get suspended, but if for some reason you're suspended, you are still expected to log on to the portal at the end of that term and update in regards to that, you've paid your tuition, there's no outstanding bills, and what your results are, so that you can be reviewed for reinstatement of your scholarship. If you have any situation that impacts your studies, please contact us immediately. We know that life happens. We've had scenarios where, persons have had to have operations. There's been death in families. There've been, accidents. People have just gotten sick really bad. Mental health issues. So all kinds of things can occur that you're not expecting. We know that can happen. But as soon as you can provide us with that update, then we can, one, give you the support that you need, that we are able to provide, and then also give you guidance in terms of how do you ensure that you can still protect your scholarship. Please be reminded that you cannot change your degree program or institution without approval. There are forms that have to be completed, and it is approved and reviewed by scholarships, but also by council. So if you do so, then it could place your scholarship in jeopardy. So before you make any kind of changes to your degree or institution, because those are what will be on your bond, please contact us and let's have a conversation. The scholarship status, there are 4 statuses. There's good standing, which means that you're making their academic requirements and you receive your funds. There is a warning, which means that you have dropped below the academic requirement, but you're still within a probationary range. So you are allowed 1 warning per degree, and your funds would also be dispersed at that time. If you are suspended, then you would not receive your funds. And it would be expected that you would self-fund that term and make the required academic criteria to be able to be reinstated in the following term. If you have funds that are suspended because due to poor academic performance and you get your grades up, we cannot reissue you the funds that were suspended, that had been suspended. So I do get those questions on occasion, so I'm just putting it out there. That's not an option, right? There's consequences to why obviously your funding was suspended, and that is upheld. The 4th status is, as I was talking about previously, life happens, so warning with extenuating circumstances. So this is when a student may fall below the academic requirements, but the circumstances are outside of their control and have obviously had some kind of impact in their performance. And again, this is why it's important to speak with the Secretariat so that we can, again, guide you in regards to, how do we proceed further and ensure that your scholarship is protected. And in most cases, those funds are also dispersed if the student is continuing in the term. Okay. If you're not awarded a scholarship, if you're not successful at this point in time, your options are to basically self-fund the first term and then use those results to determine your scholarship status in the following term. There are also the options for student loans from the various different local banks, and there are also private scholarships that will provide funding as well, that if you have applied for them. We highly recommend, and I know that usually post-grad programs will incorporate work experience, but we do highly recommend that before students are moving on to a postgraduate degree, that they have some level of work experience in what they are going to be pursuing. Some degree programs, especially those like in medicine, where you're required to move on to get your next degree level to finally reach being able to be a qualified doctor. We know that that's kind of back to back, but sometimes if you are doing, if you've just finished your degree in accounting and finance, you may want to consider working in the field, getting some experience, getting a bit more knowledge on the actual application aspect of your degree before pursuing further qualifications. And especially in the local context, this is really important. So all awardees are expected to read thoroughly, and sorry, it's in red and big and bold, but for some reason there are countless times, and it doesn't matter whether they're undergraduate or a postgraduate, that we will hear, oh, well, I didn't read that in my bond. If you are signing it, please make sure that you take the time to read what you're signing, okay? The bond document will have all of the requirements that should be followed, and is a good guidance in terms of the expectations. When the scholarship approval process is completed for this year, we will be sharing the names, degree, program, institution, and jurisdiction of all of the persons who have been awarded a government scholarship through the Ministry of Education. We ask that you share your achievements or highlights with the Secretariat so that we can highlight those and share those through various media outlets the ministry has and throughout the year. It is expected that individuals who are awarded a scholarship will return to the Cayman Islands upon completion of their studies to seek employment as repayment for the period of time that you were provided funding. So if you got funding for 1 year, then it would only be 1 year that you would be bonded back for. And reminder that at all times, persons who are on scholarship to act in a professional manner as you are an ambassador of the Cayman Islands, and you have agreed to act accordingly based on your signed bond document. And we live in a world of social media and all kinds of things that get posted on the internet. I'm sure that you are aware of some of the things that are happening throughout the world. And we now have situations where, like, I think the US has now implemented that if you are applying for a student visa, that you have to provide them with your social media account information because they are screening individuals' social media accounts. We have also heard from employers who also search social media for potential postings by potential employees. So again, you're moving from the into another level of studies. There's a certain level of expectation in terms of professionalism, and so acting responsibly, and we just encourage you to do so and follow suit. So I want to wish everyone all the best in the continuation of your scholarship application. If you are successful in being awarded a scholarship, we will be talking to you obviously in due time, but on behalf of the council, I would wish you all the best for your studies. And we look forward to you completing, being successful, and coming back to Cayman and sharing the information and knowledge that you have gained. If you have any questions, on the screen is our email contacts and the office contacts that you can reach out to us if you have any questions. So at this time, I know that was a lot of information that I just threw at you. If you have questions, can you raise your hand? And while I do that, I will check the chat if there was anything posted. Okay, so there's a question in regards to if you may potentially have other scholarships. You do have to declare other scholarships. We realize that some of you may not know of them when you are awarded the government scholarship, but you will need to definitely declare them before your next disbursement is provided. Okay. In trust, we find out because whoever you got the scholarship from, they are going to post you on social media. And I can't count how many times we have been like, wait, isn't that our scholar? That we have had that conversation. So you may not have it now, which is fine, but when you do your submissions for the fall, for the spring, you will need to include that in your spreadsheet. Okay, Polly.
Hi, yes. I just had a question about the online scholarship. And I know I'm aware that it only covers tuition and textbooks. I just wondered as to if you could advise why that is, because it's still full time. I still have my living costs, health insurance, and groceries to pay here. So I just wondered why there's a difference just because I'm studying here and online.
It's just the policy of the government. The fact that is persons that are studying online are usually, yes, employed, and they do have expenses and so forth. But right now they have not put in the provision to provide that kind of funding for online courses. So currently, we cover the tuition and the books. That's the same that we do for local students who are studying locally. It is only overseas who have to resource other accommodations. That is covered.
And is there any possibility that that might be changed in the next couple years, or is it
I
just something
cannot.
that
I can't say. Every government is different.
that's true?
But I
Okay.
can tell you that the cost that is being spent on scholarships, um, it's things are being looked at very fine tuned. So I can't say what will happen. Governments make different changes, but right now that is the policy.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so there was a question in regards to surety. If you don't have any dependents or member to sign for you as a surety, you will need to, I would suggest you contact us directly. Once you are going off island, you are required to have a surety, even if you're going to be working. So I think that's a specific case that you could contact us directly on. Nicholas?
Hi, yes. I've studied here in London for 3 years now, and prices have changed drastically. And earlier in the meeting, you said that for us to look for places outside of central London, which therefore would mean that we would have to travel into central London. But based off of what I see, you guys have done with the what do you call it, the bachelor's program, where you capped our travel. To me, it's not an issue at all, but to some it may be. The further you are out from central London, if especially if your school is in central London, there's going to be issues for these people traveling in and out, because the further you are, the less transportation you have and the more expensive it gets. So obviously, yes, not tuition, but rent might be cheaper, but that also means that they have to pay a lot more money to travel to and from central London. Because when you're traveling anything outside of zone 1 and 2, you're paying over $5 for one trip, especially if you're on a national rail. That means you're spending almost £10 a day to 12, £10 to 12 if you count in all the fees that you're paying on top of all of that. So when you guys cop that for people that were living outside in a more affordable area, it became a little bit more difficult for them to get into school. But I'm just stating this because there's a lot of people that are going to move to London to do their masters currently, and the prices have risen every year for travel. So I just don't know if travel is going to be. My question is travel going to be capped on the what do you call it, for the masters program?
The Thanks, Nicholas. On the cost spreadsheet, we have limits based on what we have seen over the years and the averages. And I understand the cost of travel and so forth. The point is, Nicholas, is that there is only a set amount of funding that you can be allocated. And so we are trying to ensure that students are making sound decisions in regards to making sure that their scholarship funds can be spread across what they need to pay for. So the most important thing is your tuition, right? And your accommodations as well. So if moving outside of London allows you to have less rent costs, yes, your transportation might go up, but you're paying less rent, right? What I see is I see students who are choosing, they're not budgeting properly. And so we end up at the end of the semester and they have not paid their full tuition, they haven't paid their full accommodations, and they are in a serious quandary because we can't, if you are allotted the maximum amount, which is 17.5 per term, we can't issue you any other funding. So that is why we kind of cap things. It doesn't mean that we will not, have a conversation with the student in terms of, let's talk about this. Why is this so high? Every time you submit your disbursement, if there is a query, if the administrators will talk with you to see how can we best work. But we have to be reasonable on what we're spending. You are spending, being provided funding through the Cayman Islands government, which is audited. And so we need to be able to make sure that the funding that is being allocated to various aspects are within the range and the parameters that the government has approved for spending.
Thank you. I agree with you fully, but essentially what I mean is if I'm spending less on rent and I'm capped at my travel, then I cannot get the full amount, even though I need it for travel.
Well,
Is
this is
that
Nicholas. This is why I'm saying you have to have a conversation with the administrator, right?
okay?
It has to be, we have to have a conversation and we have to see how do we work this out.
Okay.
We try not to let students be stranded, and if you have funding that you can access, then that is a part of that conversation. But most of the students who are going to the UK are likely not getting the max amount because master's programs, I think the tuition is not capped, and so you're paying a bit more in tuition. Steven?
Hi, did you mean me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you
I may have
for
totally messed up your name. Sorry.
that's okay. I just want to ask a quick question. I'm one of the more mature applicants. It's been a while since I was in my undergraduate degree. Since then, I've qualified as a lawyer, passed all those postgraduate exams. I've also kind of been transitioning into a career in AI, where I won a government competition and got, funding for my business. My reason for pursuing the postgraduate degree I chose is kind of to further specialize in that field and also get credentials that would cement a long-term career transition for me. So my question is, with all that said, and I also noted that you said, you prefer students to also pursue some work experience before they apply for a postgraduate degree. Is it possible at all for the Secretariat to exercise any discretion for those postgraduate students who have maybe had achievements that aren't only on the degree side, of things where it's like 2.2 or 2.1? Is there any way for us to demonstrate, these are my achievements. I think it amounts to something. And you also mentioned that there's like an option for paying for the first term yourself and then demonstrating, good grades. How does that all work with the procedures that we're moving into now with this application? Would that mean that the application has to be deferred or?
So the Secretariat, we can only make decisions based on what the current Education Council policy states. Right? We don't have the authority to change the policy, to make adjustments to the policy that fall outside of some of the extenuating circumstances that we shared. Any situations like what you have discussed have to be presented to council, and council would have to make a decision in regards to whether they would make an exception to their policy. So my recommendation is, if you are in a situation as that, if you already have a degree of the same level that you're applying for, if it is most likely that your application would be deemed ineligible because that is not within the policy. That communication will share with you what your options are in terms of appeal options. And then it would be up to you to determine whether you wanted to pursue any of those appeal options that's provided to you at that time.
Sure. I mean, it's not so, my question wasn't so much about having a degree on the same level because I don't have a master's. It's more, what does the process look like? But I think you kind of answered that. But just to clarify, what I'm talking about is more or less like you get accepted into a good university. Maybe they've had a look at your, CV and work experience. And then you're kind of, you're in a position where you kind of need to self-fund the first term, if I'm understanding this correctly, and then reapply, or how does it work?
If you don't have the GPA, and you're a mature student, then we look at your work experience as well. So it's a combination of things for post-grad, if you're not coming straight out of university.
Thank
So
you.
make sure you have all the stuff that you need to have it in your personal statement and all the other parts. Let's see. Going back to the chat. Okay, whether you're online or on campus, the amount of you will be required to repay the amount of funding you receive. So if you are doing an online degree and it's only a year, yes, upon completion of your qualifications, that is when your bond repayment period would be initiated, despite that you might be working while you're studying. So it's upon the completion of the qualification, you then are required to repay the time for the amount of funding that you would have received. So if you receive funding for 2 terms, then it would be 2 terms that you would need to be bonded for. Okay, there's some kind of like specific questions for individuals. If you have a specific question for your specific situation, my recommendation is for you to please email scholarships submissions at gov.ky, and then an administrator can actually deal with you directly, and we can look at your case and your profile and so forth. Rather than doing it in this kind of format. The PowerPoint and this presentation will be available on our YouTube page, scholarships.ky, probably later today. So you will be able to have access to those, to the information. Simon, do you have another question? Okay, Abigail?
Hello, yes. For the final transcript from the university, will that be official transcript or an unofficial transcript?
You can provide us with an unofficial transcript, but we must be able to see the university name and logo, address, and it should have all of your final grades and GPA and etc. on it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. There was a question in regards to online programs that might require a placement for work in that country. As I shared, I think earlier in the presentation, that if you're doing something online and you have different, some programs will have seminars or work placements and so forth, then yes, that is something that you can possibly be covered for. What I recommend is that when you are speaking with the administrator and formulating your bond document, that you make sure you highlight this information, which is why that degree plan is very key. So if we know that in your, say it's a 2-year program, we know that in your second year, it is expected that you travel to a specific placement for X amount of time, then we can make sure that there is a note on your file that even though you're only accessing, say, $10,000 normally, that in that year, you might need to be accessing more because you have that placement. Yes, you will only know if you are awarded a scholarship after the final submission of documents. We need to see final grades, and so forth at this point in time. You're not submitting any receipts at this period in time. Towards the end of your first term, we will contact you and say that the portal is open, and you will then have a stage where you will go in and submit your receipts and your documents and your grades and so forth. So the portal, the profile that you have created on our portal, which please make sure that you have access to it, which is why I said if you created it using an email that you no longer have access to, you're going to need to create a new account and then provide us with that email, because this is how we will be communicating throughout the period of your scholarship. So your transactions for getting funding, all of that will be through the portal. So in terms of time frame, once you submit your documents, then it goes in a queue assigned to an administrator and the processing begins. You will be asked when your program will be starting, and we try to also prioritize persons who are starting sooner than later. I will tell you that undergraduates are usually prioritized prior to postgraduates, but we work pretty diligently as long as we don't have way too many interruptions, which is why I said please limit the phone calls as soon as possible. Once you have your bond documents, once everything is agreed, you accept the terms of the scholarship, your bond documents will be done. It usually takes us a day or two to get those all put together. We will email them to you, and then it's up to you how long you take to get them back to us. Once they get back to us, once you upload them back into the system, then that actually triggers us to be able to start the next process, which is the payment process. Payments can take usually between 24 to 48 hours, depending on what local bank you're using. The bond council will consider deferring your bond repayment up to a year. Anything beyond over that requires additional approval. And we know that sometimes persons, when they finish their qualifications, have opportunity to get some experience overseas, and so therefore again, communication with the secretariat, letting us know that this is what your intentions are, so that we can make sure that we are not chasing you down because we're expecting you to be starting to repay your bond. Right? So again, it just goes back to communication, and then we can advise you what is best. Okay, I think I just answered, when the money's distributed. Money's distributed as soon as you provide all the documentations that we need and the banking information that we need, and then we can make payments. If you have decided that you want to defer your application at this time, please just email into scholarships@gov.ky. Let us know that you are deferring. Indicate for how long or when you plan to start. You can defer your scholarship for up to 1 year. And then after that, you would have to reapply. Okay, so the question for the master's and the PGCE, the PGCE is actually considered, and my administrators can correct me if I'm wrong in this, but I think both of those are looked at as the same level. So if you are applying for a master's in law, and then you want to, or you're doing your PGCE now and being funded for that it is possible, based on the policy, that you would not be funded for a master's. Okay, so the question here, can a MOE awardee decline being in the MOE press release? I am going to say no, in terms of the Cayman Islands government is investing in all of our awardees, and therefore they would like to be able to, show and praise and show how, how much money is being spent. There's significant amount of money being invested into scholarships. There's no other jurisdiction where this is done. And so if you request not to be included in such advertisements, then it would bring a conversation in regards to whether you can be awarded the scholarship. And just, we want to promote how well you all are doing, and also show how helpful, what a great opportunity that is given to Caymanians in order to continue to pursue their studies and so forth. Yeah. Okay, again, disbursements can only be used for educational purposes. If you have children that are going to be going with you, or loans, you cannot use those funds to pay for those kind of things. You can only use the funds for the educational part, for costs that are linked to your educational studies. If your degree time is longer than the scholarship is offered, then that is obviously a conversation that you would have. Obviously, there's some programs, such like the medical programs, that will go a bit longer. And so that is taken into consideration, which is again why it's important that your degree plan that you're uploading really outlines what your program looks like and how each year is scheduled out. There's no deadline for the submissions. Basically, right now in final stages, it's in your lap to complete once you have all the information that is needed. And when you send that back, then that initiates the next step and so forth. So we don't close it, probably towards the end of August. If we start to see that there's still some people who are still in final stages, we'll obviously be reaching out to find out what your intentions are. But right now, it's, as soon as you all get the stuff back to us, then we can start to process. Please be considerate. We have over 300 and something new undergraduate applicants. We have 180 something postgraduate applicants, and then we have probably close to almost 600-700 persons who are returning on scholarship, and that's just overseas. That does not include our local. We are a team of 7, and everybody needs their money all at the same time. So please, patience. The more information, the more accurate the information is that you provide, then the less chances for that corrections back and forth, which is what really delays the process. Okay. So I think we have covered most of the questions. If you have a question, like I said, that was not answered during the presentation or during this question and answer session, you can email us. Let me just share that slide. You can email us at either scholarships.gov or scholarship submissions, or even call, and we will do our best to answer your questions. I thank you all very, very much for attending, and I wish you all the best in the remainder of your scholarship application. And if you are successful in being awarded a scholarship, congratulations, and we look forward to hearing amazing things that you'll be doing over the next year or 2.